My name's Kevin Callahan. I'm with the 8th Air Force Historical Society of Minnesota, and today is November 13th, 2012. I'm here with Floyd Keller at his home in Bayport, and we're going to do an oral history interview and record some of his stories. Floyd, could you tell me your full name?
My full name is Floyd E.Keller, Jr.
And are you named after other people?
I'm named after my father.
Oh, was his name Floyd?
Yeah, and he liked the junior.
Okay. And you don't use the junior, I take it?
No, I don't.
You don't like being...
And I would have taken either Floyd or Errol if either name had been better.
Yeah.
But either name was not better, so I settled for Floyd.
Yeah. Now, what's Everell? Is that a relative, or what is the...
There is a relative named Errol.
Okay.
But of no particular note.
Yeah. And then, did you have any nicknames or anything when you were growing up or in the service, or?
Well, I had black hair in high school sometimes. There's a couple of guys called me Blackie.
Uh-huh.
But I never really had a nickname that stuck.
Yeah, yeah. When were you born?
I was born March 1926.
And where were you born?
I was born in Valley City, North Dakota.
And could you tell me your parents' names and maybe a little about their background?
Well, my father, Floyd E.Keller, came from a farm of about, I think there were about 11 in his family. And my mother came from a farm, my father came from a farm in Minnesota, I believe, and my mother's family came from Nebraska. They both had families of about 10 or 11.
Wow, those are big,
they're big families,
yeah.
But then everybody had a job to do. You know?
Yeah.
Everything was done by hand, you know.
Yeah.
And
so, how did your dad end up in North Dakota?
Well, I think he followed one of his brothers. Went to Valley City to become a delivery man, and my father bought a truck, and he contracted with a local meat market to deliver groceries.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Huh. I remember a milkman when I was growing up, so they were still delivering milk, even in the 60s. Now, your dad was in World War I?
My dad was in World War I. He was in the Army. I think he was only in 6 months and then it ended, and he never got overseas.
Mm-hmm. And was he in the Army doing any particular jobs or anything?
You know, I don't remember anything about his role in the Army, other than I think I saw a picture one time.
Yeah. Now, the Kellers, are they from, were they immigrants originally from Germany or somewhere?
Well, the Keller part is German. They think it's German, although it's English. Well, it's German in that part. And they came from the south, but there's no connection that I know with Germany.
Okay.
And my mother, her name was Pitchford, which was English.
Hmm.
But in the Pitchford, there was English, Irish, and French.
Mm-hmm.
And her relatives apparently came from England.
So, do you have any idea when the original Keller came over?
No, I have no idea.
Because I know in South Germany there was a large influx in the 1848 period, which was when my people came over too.
Keller, it just means cellar in German.
Oh.
And so, you know, you talk about Russ Keller and...
yeah, I didn't know that. Huh.
Yeah.
Did you have any siblings then? You had a lot of siblings, I take it. There's many in your...
Well, my father and mother had brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
They did all sorts of things. And then I had 2 sisters.
Okay. And what schools did you attend growing up?
I went all the way through Valley City, North Dakota, public school system. I started in kindergarten. I went through the elementary school, and then in the middle of the block was the junior high school, and in the end of the block was the senior high school. And so I went through all 3 schools.
So they kept it, that's nice, then you don't have as far to go distance-wise. Nope. Did you have to walk to school, or?
Yeah, I think I had 6 blocks.
Oh, that's not bad, yeah.
Yeah.
So, being born in 1926, you're memories probably start in the time of the Great Depression, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
What was the Great Depression like for your family?
Well, I remember that my father had work, and many people didn't. So they had food stamps and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't remember a lot about it. I remember there were all sorts of men that walking around, and they were available for any kind of work that you could think of.
Yeah.
And but my father had work, so we probably got less. Well, he used to say we got less oranges and things than the people that were on the work WPA.
Mm-hmm.
But we lived fine.
And although you're pretty young and during this time, do you have any memories of the Dust Bowl or?
I can remember going to a nearby place to visit, and it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had the lights on the truck. We were riding in the back of the grocery truck, and he had my father had the lights on because at 3 o'clock in the afternoon it was almost dark out that we couldn't see ahead of us.
Wow.
And then all of the fence lines were piled high with tumbleweeds, and the ditches were filled with nice black dirt.
Huh. So the topsoil was coming off and blowing all over the place.
Yes.
Did this put a strain on the farmers that were around you, or in terms of were they able to continue farming, or what effect did it have?
Well, a lot of them were. Again, I don't really recall completely, but I know they were just hanging on.
Yeah.
And there was lots of. I think there's some kind of federal aid or something that helped them along, but until things got back to normal.
Yeah, and there were like. What would you call it? I guess transient laborers who were looking for work, and hobos and all kinds of wandering.
All kinds of people
Yeah.
Around looking for work. Anything that they could find.
Was it drying out also, or was that what caused this Dust Bowl? Or
Well, it was a drought, and the wind, and of course the grasshoppers ate the vegetation. The grasshoppers seemed to thrive on the drought, because they ate everything green in sight.
Yeah.
And I know we had to, my father had a small garden, and we had to keep watering it and putting pierced green. I don't know what that means, but it was some kind of poison we put on the plants to keep the grasshoppers off.
Yeah. Did you, were you able to find any jobs during the Depression? You would have been a young man or a boy growing up during that time. Were there any, what was your first job?
My first job was selling papers downtown. Well, my first job was picking weed in my neighbor's garden. And my second job was selling papers, the Fargo Forum, which 60 miles straight east was Fargo. And we go down and grab the papers that they threw them off the train, and then we go to the cafes selling newspapers.
Oh.
And then after that, I got a paper route, and so I kept my paper route all the way through high school.
Yeah. What was the house like you grew up in?
Very small. It was only, I think it was 26 by 26, and there were 5 of us. And it had a cellar, which in German you'd call it a Keller.
Uh-huh.
I had a cellar, and my mother, I remember one season canned 300 jars of something or other, out of a garden.
Yeah, that's
and you
pretty
could
good.
hear it during the winter when one of the tomato jars would explode because it leaked air,
Uh-huh.
And but we had a very small house. We did not have much room.
At that time, did they have like a rural electrification, or were you in a town, or how did the electricity come in?
I was in a town, and for us we had electricity, one wire
Yeah,
that came in.
one wire, and then like outlets, or
Oh no.
no
Oh
outlets.
no.
What was the electricity like when it first started?
Actually, it was one wire, and there were a couple of places hanging down from the ceiling. And if you needed to put anything, you put in a plug and plugged in.
Uh-huh.
But you didn't have outlets.
Yeah. How about heat? How did you heat the house?
We heated the house with the oil, and I used to carry it from the garage, from the big tank in the garage, to the house in a 10-gallon can, I believe it was. And I pour the oil into the back of the oil heater.
Was it like a standalone? It wasn't like a furnace in the house, or?
No, standalone.
Oh, huh. And then it worked like what, like a carburetor? It would drip the oil and then heat it, or do you know how it worked? Or?
And there was a pot in the center, and I can't quite remember how it worked.
My mother remembers this and has described this because she lived for a time on a second or third floor, and she had to carry it up the stairs. So she has the same memory of this kind of heating thing.
It was central heating, you know. It was warm near the stove and colder as you got away from it.
Yeah. Did you have any like activities or sports or anything in school? Your high school?
I liked gymnastics. I was in Fayette, of course, but I played hockey. I was on a hockey team, an average player, and I was in a gymnastics team.
Yeah. Were your parents churchgoers or anything, or?
No.
Okay.
And it's kind of interesting because my parents, one grew up Methodist, and one grew up Baptist, but they both had left.
Yeah.
And they never went back.
Yeah. My parents were the same way, and one was supposedly Protestant, one was supposedly Catholic, and neither one of them were very religious. But that was called a mixed marriage back then.
Well, when I was 10 years old, a neighbor girl went to a Lutheran church. So I got picked up and taken to that church, and eventually I was, what do you call it when you had?
Like a bar mitzvah, or?
No, well, it's baptized.
Oh, baptized, yeah.
Yeah, I was baptized in the Lutheran church.
Okay.
And then it turned out that one of my close friends, his dad was a Lutheran minister, just by accident.
Did you have the typical, like the holidays and Thanksgiving dinners and all those that your family would get together?
Yes.
Did your family get together as a large group or anything, or was it just your nuclear family?
No, it's just the nuclear family.
Okay. Are there any, physical characteristics that run in your family that people genetically in the future might want to know about? You've been in good health most of your life, and very active up until recently with bicycling and everything.
Well, my mother lived to 101 and a half.
Wow.
And my father lived to 70. He just made 70.
Yeah.
He had trouble with his health. He had, until my mother got a hold of him, he did not have a good diet.
Yeah.
And he didn't like fruits or vegetables.
Yeah.
He was a meat eater.
Yeah. And he passed away from what, heart attack or something?
Heart.
Yeah. Did he smoke too? Or?
No, but he chewed snuff. Copenhagen.
Oh.
You put it right underneath here.
That's not good. We've learned since those days. Well then, so you were in high school when the Second World War started. In December 741 we were attacked. Just before that period, now you're still in high school, so I don't know how aware you are of the world events, but did you have a sense of what was going on with Japan or Germany in terms of the world situation before the war?
Yeah, we were following the news.
Yeah.
And we would get the main events. Plus, I was a paperboy. And so a lot of times I would read the headlines and read, I had the paper.
Yeah. So you had kept up with what was going on.
Well, I sort of read the headlines.
Yeah. So you're in high school as a senior when the war started on December 7th? Or
well,
when were you a junior?
When did it start?
41, December 7th, 41. And you graduated
44, 43, 43. Well, I went in at the end of graduation in 44, and that would be 1944. So the war ended or started. When I was.
Oh yeah, you're okay. So you're not a senior. You're like really much younger.
Yes.
At that point when this happened.
And it started.
And what, there's a Remembrance Day, actually, if you look on the calendar, called Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day,
Yeah.
but there's fewer and fewer people who remember Pearl Harbor. So, do you have memories of
Oh, yes,
hearing about it?
Yeah, I remember. Oh, yeah, that was big news.
What did you remember, or what was where were you, and what did you learn?
Well, all I remember is that the paper had a big headline,
Yeah,
Pearl Harbor,
yeah.
and
So you saw it right in the paper
oh yeah.
right away.
See, I was a paperweight.
Did you hear anything on the radio or listen to the
Well,
president?
my father was a news junkie, so he would listen to the Apex radio, the old Apex.
Is that a brand of radio?
It's an old brand of radio, the big thing, Gosh, you imagine today. But he would listen to the news.
Yeah. Oh, that's an old, like a tube radio that would stand
Yeah.
in your living
Yes,
room kind
yes.
of thing. And so did you hear like Roosevelt when he gave the
Roosevelt,
speech?
Roosevelt gave a speech.
Yeah.
I remember trying to remember some
The
of the lines.
day of infamy, and
that's it. Yeah.
well, so I assume at that point, sort of the world changed, and you probably figured you were going to end up in the military, I suppose.
Well, what happened in my senior year is that they were, as soon as you turned 18, you left.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that you hadn't finished school. But the Navy Reserve, if you went to a nearby town, Jamestown, which is 40 miles straight west, you could enroll in the Navy Reserve, and they would allow you to finish high school. So I went to Jamestown and registered, enrolled in the Navy Reserve, 2 years in duration, or what do they call it? And a day and a half after I graduated, I was on a train headed for Farragut, Idaho.
So they didn't waste
No, they
any
didn't waste
time.
any
They
time.
graduated and then.
But I finished.
Yeah. So you were not the January but the June graduation, I assume.
June.
Okay. And then tell me about Farragut, Idaho. I guess that was a naval training station.
Yeah. Well, the main one was in Illinois.
Oh yeah, the Great Lakes.
Great Lakes
yeah.
Training Center.
And you didn't go there for basic.
No, I went
Okay.
to the new one.
Yeah.
At Farragut.
And what did they do? Was that like a basic training facility?
They had both boot camp, and they offered a number of training specialties after that.
Yeah.
I went to boot camp, and then afterwards, I went to the gunner's mate training.
And gunner's mate, you'd have to, in theory, learn how to operate what, a 50 caliber?
You learned how to repair, disassemble, lubricate common weapons.
Yeah. Did they start you out with like learning how to march and giving you shots and
Yes.
that sort of stuff?
Yes, in the boot camp, yes.
Where were you inducted, at Fort Snelling, or were you sent right away to Idaho? In other words, when you walked in and you swore, took the oath and got shots and all that stuff?
I think it was right at Farragut.
Okay. And then, do you remember what if you got a lot or little of the gunnery training there, or what?
Well, see, the reason I ended up gunner's mate, I really wanted to be an aviation machinist, and that was in Norman, Oklahoma, and they were full.
Yeah.
I had mechanical aptitude, they said,
Yeah.
by my tests, and they said, well, if you have mechanical aptitude, gunner's mate will suit you fine. And so I ended up gunner's mate school.
Yeah. I suppose they probably needed the gunner's mates at the time or something.
Yeah.
So did they have you like shooting with shotguns, or how did you train somebody for gunnery?
We didn't do so much shooting as we did breaking down and disassembling.
Oh, okay. So you could repair it if it
Yeah,
broke,
yeah.
and kept it
We're
maintained.
more concerned about maintaining.
Yeah, yeah. They probably figured you'd get a lot of shooting practice when you got out on the ship or
Right.
something. So then, when you finished that sort of basic training, and then your more specialized gunnery mate training, do you remember any time where you were able to get off the base, or did they keep you on the? Did you have any leave?
No, you had
or-
liberty. You had
You
regular
did.
liberty, and you would go into town. And
What was Farragut, Idaho like? Was it a small town or something?
Well, it was a small town there, but we went to, I can't even remember the other town we went to. But there were so many of us
Yeah,
and so few of them
yeah.
that actually overwhelmed the place.
It was all uniforms.
Yeah, it's all uniforms.
Yeah. So from there, where was your next station?
Well, the next station I went down is to, I was put in a Treasure Island holding, on Treasure Island, kind of a holding area.
Yeah.
And
Where's Treasure Island?
right in San Francisco
Yeah,
Bay.
yeah, right in the bay there.
And I was first or second alternate for the aircraft carrier Lafayette,
Okay.
which I think came to a bad end.
Uh-huh.
And fortunately, everybody appeared, so the two alternates, and I was one of the two,
Yeah.
we weren't required.
So you lucked out.
I lucked
You
out.
might not be here if it
Yeah,
hadn't
yeah,
been
right.
for that. And then, so you had this period of time on Treasure Island in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Did you get off the island, or did they keep you there?
Well, then I ended up on the USS Luck, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And there were 2,000 of us, sailors, and 3,000 Army people. And we went then for 16 days to Noumea, Caledonia.
Uh-huh.
Noumea, New Caledonia.
New Caledonia. And then I saw somewhere in a record this Army transport, U.S. Army transport was Frederick Lykes, L-Y-K-E-S or something?
That was it.
Is it?
That was it. I got it wrong. Frederick Lykes.
Well, you know more about it than I do. I read it in a record somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And this New Caledonia, it's pronounced Nume, or how do you pronounce that?
Noumea.
Nemea. Okay. And that was where you first.
That's where. Then I was in a holding barracks, and then 8 of us were replacements on this one APD, where they had taken a loss of 8 or so men at Lady Gulf.
Yeah.
An APD 32 Goldsborough.
Yeah.
And so I became a replacement, one of the 8 replacements, and this ship was anchored right at.
Yeah.
At.
So you were a replacement. Now, for people that aren't familiar, and everybody should be familiar with this, the Battle of Leyte Gulf was like the largest naval battle in human history.
Yeah.
And so they had lost some people,
Yes.
and then the APD was a form of a destroyer. I think the
Old destroyer escort converted to 4 landing boats.
yeah. So these were like from World War I era originally.
Yes.
And then the APD, or I think they called them auxiliary personnel destroyer or something, but you called them attack
Personnel destroyer.
personnel. And the can you describe the sort of the function that they saw for the APDs?
What they saw is that they would take these 4 boats, and I think each boat carried 50 Marines, and they would go into the beach and land the Marines, which would be 200 total,
Mm-hmm.
and then they off. Now, and the boats were fairly fast. They went 26, 27 knots,
Mm-hmm.
and so they could get in, land the 200 guys, and off.
Yeah. And how did they have these arranged on the destroyer? Was it like, did they hang off of hooks or something, or how did it work?
They had mounts, 4 mounts, center ship, amidships,
Mhm.
and 4 mounts in for the boats.
Yeah. And there's actually, I think, a number of documentaries about Higgins, who was the inventor of this landing craft. So they sometimes call them Higgins boats, but landing craft is actually what they did.
Yes.
And so I always wondered how the landing crafts got to the landing beaches, and this is how it was done. It was done with the destroyer. Now, this World War I original configuration had like 4 stacks.
4 stack heads.
And then how did they change the stacks or somehow, or how did you have 4 stacks when it was altered into an APD, or do you remember?
You know, I don't remember more than two.
Well, I think they must have been shortened, and they must have changed the way the thing looked. Because when you see the original 1918 kind of destroyer, and you look at them later, they look different in terms of how the stacks were laid out. And you have a good book there. It's the Green Dragons, which is the kind of the nickname for these. Yeah. Well, these are interesting uses of ships that they had available at the time, because they're reconfiguring them. Yeah.
They're riveted. They were still riveted.
Well, these look like they have two stacks, like you're saying, after they hit. And you can see on the cover there's kind of these ways of getting the things down into the water.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess a photograph would kind of answer anybody's question about it. But the original Goldsborough was actually in use during World War I then, as far as you know.
As far as I know.
Yeah.
It was a destroyer escort.
Mm-hmm. So you came to the ship for the first time, and what was your memories or impressions of the Goldsborough?
Well, I was all dressed up. I can't remember. I think I was in dressed whites. And when I came to the ship, the ships were anchored. There were several ships anchored on the end of the dock, and they were anchored one across the other, so we had to walk across other ships to get to it. And I kept thinking, which ship is it? And finally, I saw the ship with the holes in the stack, and the guys with beards and no shirts, and you couldn't tell what nationality they were so dark. And that was the ship. That was my new home.
And so you were all dressed up, and you're the replacement for these guys that have been out there fighting for
32 months.
32
They'd been
months.
on the ship for 32 months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and plus they'd been through some action too. Was there damage to one of the stacks?
One of the stacks had holes in it.
Yeah.
And the shell had exploded.
Yeah.
And about 8 of them were killed.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got on board. Did they assign you to a particular berth or anything?
I was assigned a berth, but which is just a canvas bunk, where if you turned over, you probably hit the bottom of the next guy. But what I was kind of disappointed in is that I didn't end up as a gunner's mate striker. I ended up on the deck crew. And so for the first, I don't know, month or two, I chipped paint.
Yeah.
I worked on deck crew with the other seamen.
So that was kind of a letdown.
Right.
And I suppose on a sea going with all the salt water, you're probably dealing with the paint all the time on a ship.
You're constantly painting a ship.
Yeah.
The minute you stop at one end, you start at the other end.
Yeah. And then you had a shipmate that didn't know, he didn't know how to read, or?
Yeah. He was from the South. He was really kind of a nice guy. And he could play and sing. He could play a guitar like you wouldn't believe. But he couldn't. He got a letter from his girl and he couldn't read it. So we worked out a deal. I taught him how to read his girl's letters, and he used the same vocabulary his girl used. And he taught me chords on the guitar. And so,
well, I noticed right right to your side there's a guitar. Do you still play the guitar?
No, actually that belongs to my son.
Oh, okay. But you learned at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. You're originally at New Caledonia. What's the next place you went to with the ship? Were you assigned to?
We went from New Caledonia. We supplied up. We went to Ulithi, and all I saw in Ulithi were ships.
Yeah.
I couldn't see any land.
Yeah.
I could see ships, and there were ships everywhere you looked. Well, it turned out they were massing to go up to Okinawa. We arrived at Okinawa, I think, about 6 days after the invasion. I can't remember, 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we arrived there, and we were assigned a subscreen. We went down alongside a certain section of the island, watching that no submarines got in between us and the land.
Yeah.
And at night we could see the two lines. By then we could identify that our line, the flares were very bright,
Yes.
and the flares of the enemy were very poor.
Yes.
And we could see the lines.
So this is at night when they were trying to illuminate the battlefield? Or?
Well, apparently, I don't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
But we could see the two lines.
Yeah. So you were close enough to see what was going on in shore a
Yes.
little bit. Yeah. And then how did you find protect the landing area from the submarines? Was it sonar, or how was that done? Do you know?
Well, actually, sonar was what we had.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. We mostly went back and forth, and I wasn't sure what they were doing. But I know the day that they lowered Naha, which is the capital city of
Okinawa.
Okinawa, the big battleships moved in, and then we were really we really had to protect them, because they were, when they fired, they were inoperative.
Yeah.
They could not protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we ran anti-subscreen for the large battleships, and I remember they reduced 4-story, 5-story buildings. When they got done, nothing was higher than 2 feet, 3 feet.
Yeah. What was it like when those battleship guns went off?
Oh, wow. All we saw was this side of the ship. Now, the size of the battleship, they said the size of the shell was the size of a Volkswagen. But you could see you tell when the guns went off, because the wake on this side of the ship would be washed up,
Oh, it moved the entire battleship and created a wave that hit your ship.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
And
Wow.
so we went back and forth, and they proceeded to lower the town.
Could you hear shells going in the air?
Yeah.
What does that sound like?
Well,
Is it like a whirring sound or a whirling sound, or what is it? Do you have any recollection of?
I don't know. I don't. It's just cacophony.
Yeah, yeah. And that once they're in their battle position firing, then they're really not able to defend themselves because they're not moving.
That's why That's why we did the subscreen.
Well, you sometimes hear the term destroyers as picket ships. Mm-hmm. Is that the way that was described?
Well, they talked about a picket line, and you had a assigned space, and you were to go to one end of it, then you turned around and go to the other end.
Yeah.
So that you were doing picket duty in a sense.
Yeah. And what were you doing on the ship? Were you working a gun, or?
Well, at that time, then I finally was on the gunsmithing crew, and so I was on assigned a quad 50 caliber. No, I guess it's still 50 caliber on the stern.
So it's a twin 50.
Yes.
And then, or was this a crew supported gun? In other words, there were people getting the ammunition, or was it just one person?
Everybody had a job. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the job was to fire the gun. Another person's job was to hold the belt, and then there was a officer in the back, and he would oversee the whole thing. So I was near the stern of the boat.
So you're actually looking down the sights of the thing.
Yes.
And was the ammunition coming in from both sides, or how did you feed a twin?
I'm trying to remember what it was. It seemed to me it was a belt.
Yeah, yeah. And so did you run into enemy aircraft, or did you see enemy aircraft?
We would listen on these, what we call squawk boxes. And that's little radios posted, or at least the speakers posted throughout the ship. And it would say enemy bogey bearing 180, 20 miles. 10, 5, 4. And then you hear the ships open up on the enemy bogey, which is the flyers. And then they come over you, and it was It was well, at night it was like a 4th of July.
And you'd open up then with the tracers and all that?
Yeah, every fourth shell, third or fourth shell had phosphorus on it.
Yeah.
So you could see the tracer.
Now the planes that were coming in, were they trying to bomb or torpedo the ships, or were they kamikazes, or what?
Well, we were near the end of the war, and they had some they were selective, but some of them were kamikaze.
Yeah.
Like the hospital ship, the USS Comfort, the kamikaze struck right in the center of the Red Cross, but the bomb didn't go off. So so the plane is sticking out of the Red Cross.
Wow. So they were using that as the target point, the cross?
They used that as a target.
Oh boy, that's terrible. And you got an airplane stuck out the side of the hospital ship?
Yes,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Now these were what, Zeros? The I don't know what the kamikazes flew.
Zeros, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as they would come in on a dive or whatever, was it like a gradual dive, or they came in from straight up and down, or what do you remember in terms of how the Japanese attacked?
You know, it was more of a disorder. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it wasn't.
It's chaotic.
It was chaotic.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Now, you said you were originally, your kind of staging point was Ulithi Lagoon, and I've seen photographs of that, and it was just incredible. I mean, it looked like, as far as you could see, were ships.
Ships. I looked. Where's the land? I said. They call it Ulithi. Where's Ulithi? Someone said, I think it's over there. All I could see was ships.
And this was like a big lagoon that you could put ships inside the lagoon, and it would protect you from waves and stuff.
Apparently.
But it must have been an enormous place to have put all of those ships there.
I don't know what Ulithi looks like.
Yeah.
I was there, but
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like.
Now, when you were at Okinawa, was there a lot of ships visible from where you were?
Oh yeah, all along the shore, or all along we were on picket duty. Well, we had ships meeting us, and then there were ships and ships. Well, there were all kinds of ships.
Yeah.
And when the Japanese Zeros would get in the area, you could just hear it. You could tell where they were. The planes were by the sound of the firing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now, were the Marines already landed by the time you had gotten there?
Yes.
And so you didn't have to do the
No,
landing
no,
craft
no.
thing?
I wasn't there for the invasion.
Yeah.
I was there about 6 days later.
Yeah. And what area in Okinawa were you near? Was it a town or anything that you can relate this to?
I was near Naha.
Yeah.
I can say that. Now, wherever Naha is, I suspect that Naha is.
Must have been originally was a town that existed.
Naha is the main city of Okinawa.
Yeah. And then, did you say the Higuchi Beaches? Is that the name of that landing area? Hagushi.
That sounds familiar, but.
And did you have any other duty where you, had to pick up pilots or anything?
Well, there are two pilots. Actually, an American pilot came in close, but he didn't give the signal, and so we started firing at him. But he was going so slowly that we missed him, and he crashed, or he sat down next to us, and the dive marker went up, and then he popped up. Well, he was concerned that we get him back to, and we called it Buckner Bay.
Yeah.
I don't know what the real name.
No, that is the name of it.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Buckner Bay.
Well, anyway, he was concerned that we get him back to Buckner Bay. He was 22 years old. He was afraid his wife would hear that he was missing in action.
Yeah.
So we picked him up.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what we did with him. Another one we picked up, and it was a Japanese, but he had been shot as his parachute came down. For I don't know what he was parachuting for, but they shot him on the way down.
Yeah.
And his face, part of his face, swung open and closed like a door.
Yeah.
And
so he was dead when he hit the water.
Pockets and
yeah.
There was a picture of his girl and his flag, picture of flag and so forth.
You went through this offense?
No, I didn't go through. But the guys that pulled him out of the water,
yeah,
they went through his pockets and took everything.
Yeah. I hear something. It was a beeping I guess it's ended. So the plane that went down, that was a Navy plane, do you remember, was that like a Hellcat or something?
F4U.
Oh, okay. A Corsair?
Mm-hmm.
And did it stay on the water very long, or did
It went
sink?
down immediately.
It sank real quick.
The dive came up before the guy came up.
Oh, okay. Did he have a boat, a little inflatable boat or anything? Or?
Well, no. The minute he came up, we saved him.
Yeah.
We got him. He
Yeah.
landed next to us.
Yeah. Well, so many. Oh, the other thing was, you said he was supposed to give like a code word or something, or
Well, his plane was supposed to emit a friendly code,
uh-huh.
which it didn't.
Over the radio.
I can't remember how the code is transmitted.
Yeah.
But it's a way that we tell a friendly aircraft from the, and it didn't. He didn't admit it.
Yeah.
So we opened up on him.
Yeah.
But because he was going so slowly, we missed him.
Yeah. And he was on his way into the drinks at the time.
Yes, he was. It was a bullet hurt his oil line, so his plane was down.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah. He was probably doing close air support or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that the Navy pilots really, they thought the world of people on destroyers, because they picked them up when they went down in the water.
Yep.
And somebody had told me that one of the traditions in the Navy was that when you gave them back, that you got some ice cream. Did that ever happen?
I can't remember. I don't think so, but...
Well, if you had a guy on a carrier and you had a line that you had to go between the destroyer and the carrier, the first the ice cream came across, then they got the pilot back. So I guess that's because you didn't have ice cream on a destroyer, but you did on a carrier.
Yeah.
So when you were on the Goldie and you're looking off on the shore, what was that like? I mean, being on a ship and then watching all these Marines on, was it?
Well, we weren't close enough so you could see them.
Okay.
We could see the lights at night.
Yeah.
Which are, carry a long ways.
Yeah.
But we were far enough offshore so that we couldn't see anybody. We couldn't see anybody walking or identify humans.
Yeah.
But you could see the ruggedness of the land.
Yeah. Well, how long were you then at Okinawa, and then where did you go from there?
I was at Okinawa. It seems like we were a couple of weeks, or a week maybe. Then we went to Guam or someplace for repairs, and then we went back to Okinawa.
Yeah.
I was at Okinawa a total of 30 days.
Oh, okay. And what were the repairs for? Was there some damage?
We hadn't been hit or anything, but apparently something. We're an old ship.
Yeah.
1918.
Yeah.
And so we didn't need to be hit to be need repairs.
Yeah. Well, was Guam quite a distance?
I'm trying to remember if it was Guam we went to. We went to a place to get repairs.
Yeah. Well, Guam would have been the big base with all the. That's very possible. It was Guam because of the repair facilities there.
That's what I remember.
Yeah. So you were there, and then the 30 days was up. Was that getting close to the time that they rotated ships through, or what was the reason that you ended at the end of the 30 days? Or left at the end of the 30 days?
Well, what I remember is that the war hadn't ended. I mean, the Okinawa hadn't ended, but I think we almost had it by then.
Yeah, it was nearing
and we left Okinawa to face a typhoon.
Oh.
And here was a a cruiser. It just went down from a battleship, and the bollard was broken off by the typhoon, but they batten down the hatches.
Yeah.
So they could float. And I remember our being in it, and what I remember is that the closest I came to feeling we were going to die was right there.
In the typhoon.
These waves were mountainous, and our ship had a very sharp prow on it, and we would ride over these huge waves, and then we head down. And when we would head down, we were submerged, like a submarine. And you wonder about the stacks and everything else. And and I remember that I happened to be on the standing duty on the in the control room, and I remember the officer and the navigator and so forth, being really concerned about how much ballast they should carry
Yeah.
in order to, in other words, they can increase ballast instantly by letting more water in,
Yeah.
pumping water out. And they wondered how much ballast they should have in order to keep the ship afloat. That was one of our most scary moments.
Yeah.
It lasted about 8 hours.
So that typhoon was a very serious threat to the ships.
And then we were on the way to Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
And then we got to Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. Well, what was Pearl Harbor like back then?
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Good place. Well, naturally, it was a natural place for military people.
Yeah.
Because they'd have military people for years. And so, actually, it was a marvelous place, except for all the ships turned upside down.
Mm-hmm. Were there still was there still evidence of the Pearl Harbor attack?
Oh yeah. And they sure were.
Yeah. And from
Shh. See?
well, we can take a break if you want. Or, so you went then from Pearl Harbor, or how long were you in Pearl Harbor? Just to stay over, or were you? Where did you go from there?
10 days, and then,
Yeah.
then we went to San Pedro,
Okay.
California, and then the ship was decommissioned. Eventually, and the guys had so many points.
Yeah.
And let's see, and the war ended, and the war ended. And then the guys had so many points they got off, but I didn't have any points.
You hadn't
I
been on
wasn't
there
married.
long enough. Yeah.
I wasn't married, and so I go back out in the aircraft carrier to Pearl Harbor, and then from there I can't remember where I caught the LST,
Yeah.
landing ship tanks,
Yeah.
and we brought the civilian Japanese from the islands, all their islands. We brought them back home. That was their job.
Now, do you remember what the name of the aircraft carrier was that you took back to Pearl Harbor?
I wish I knew. It was a smaller one.
Oh, like an escort carrier or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the big
It wasn't one of the big ones,
Lexington
no.
or Saratoga or something.
No.
And could you describe what an LST or this landing ship tank looks like for maybe the people that don't know what that is?
Well, it looks like a big barge, only it's deep. And what it is, it's really a floating garage, which the front drops down, and tanks roll into it. And when it's used the way it ought to be, it is full of tanks, and then the control tower is on the aft, or the very back end, that sticks up high above a flat deck. And so you sit in the control tower, and you see this big deck ahead of you, and it's built in such a way, it's welded so that when it hits waves, it flexes. It's made to flex, but it's noisy in heavy seas because it flexes.
And you're wondering whether it's going to come apart.
Yeah, and we were assigned one of these to take civilians back from the islands of Japan, or the islands south that Japan had occupied, take it back to the country.
So this is the repatriation of people who had been
Exactly.
out in the Pacific Islands
Exactly.
after the war was probably part of the deal with the surrender.
Exactly.
And were you on two of these or one of these LSTs?
You know, I think I was on two, and I don't
Okay.
know why I was on that second one, but I was on LSTs till the end of the war.
Yeah. And then you had an experience with a mother on one of these?
Oh, gosh. One night I'm on an LST, and we've got a whole tank deck full of civilians with blankets and so forth. And here is a Japanese woman having twins. Well, I didn't know she's going to have twins. So the officer of the deck assigns me because I'm an enlisted man. You go down and help. Well, I went down, and they wanted the usual water and the cloth and so forth. And I went down and I helped. But I didn't.
So you were, what, boiling water for bandages or something?
Yeah.
Now, did you know much about being a midwife at that point in
Didn't
your
know
life?
anything about it.
Okay.
All I knew was that after I saw the afterbirth, I didn't eat for 3 days.
So you got an education
Oh,
in the Navy.
but I saw her the next day and she was fine. The two babies were fine, and they were most grateful.
Now, I want to just go back for a moment. There was a time you were on the Goldie and you were firing at a 0, and then there was a close call where you had
Oh, we'd gone into Buckner Bay. This might have been when we returned as pilot that I told you earlier
Yeah.
about. Well, anyway, we're in Buckner Bay, and it's a beautiful day with a few fleecy clouds. All of a sudden, a Japanese Zero appears on the scene. Here's a new destroyer from the United States anchored just aft of us. And we both opened up on Japanese Zero, and they immediately, they had the modern radar fire control.
Yeah.
So they hit the wing, and the wing started on fire, and the Japanese Zero was crashed between us, but they never stopped firing. And so parts of their shrapnel were hitting our superstructure, and so I backed away from the machine gun back into the head, and there the gunnery officer was also back in the head, taking
You're
cover.
both hiding out from the shots, huh? Now, you were stationed on the rear of the back of the ship there. What other kind of armaments or guns was on?
On the front of the ship, they had a 3-inch 50, and up on the top in front of the two boats, they had, I think they were quad mount 40s.
It's like the pom-pom you always see in the movies and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were very effective. And I think there might have been a couple of others, 20s, and then the 50 caliber.
Now, in front of the state capitol in Minnesota, there is what I think might be a 3-inch gun, which is from the USS Ward, which they said was the first shot fired during the Second World War. Came out of that, and it's still in front of our state capitol. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. The U.S. Ward. Actually, was that at Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, it was right outside of Pearl Harbor, and it sank a submarine trying to get into Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And it was just before the attack on Pearl Harbor happened. And the USS Ward, I believe, is one of the Green Dragons like you were on.
Absolutely.
And
number 1, I think.
Yeah, and that gun, so if people wanted to see, I think that's a 3-inch gun from a destroyer, just like the one you had on your ship. So the Goldie returns to San Pedro, and then it's decommissioned after all those years of service from World War 1918 on to the end of the war. After the war, how long was it before they let you out, or that you had enough time with the LSTs to get out? Was it in '46?
Well, I got out in '46.
Yeah. Where did they discharge you?
Bremerton, Washington.
Oh, okay. And that was pretty. So you landed, and then did you land at Bremerton, or did you go to?
No, I landed in California, someplace.
Yeah.
And then I took a train to Bremerton.
How did people get around during World War II? Was it mostly like passenger trains, or did they have troop trains, or what was it like to travel?
Well, if they were moving you, it's troop trains.
Yeah.
But if you're moving yourself, it was mostly trains.
Yeah. Like a diesel or steam, or I don't know what they would have had.
Most of them were steam.
Yeah.
Coal.
Yeah. I've never been on one. Are they kind of like the coal comes back and you smell it, or is it?
Well, if the wind is wrong.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because you got that big plume coming out of the.
So Bremerton, you got out, and then did you have some time where you went back home, or what did you do?
What I got out, I think, at a time, so I had the summer free.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of did nothing
Mm-hmm.
until I went to college in the fall.
Yeah. Oh, you took advantage of the GI Bill.
Absolutely. In fact, it went all the way through my bachelor's, most of my master's, and even a couple of doctorate courses were part of my GI Bill.
Well, many people I've talked to that were in World War II said that was the best thing they ever came up with, because you had 16 million people in service coming back to the United States, and what are you going to do? So this opportunity to go to college or go to get additional school meant that there's kind of decompression, but you also got a double education. You got the education of being in the service and going all over the world, and then also you got an education at the end of it. So you had a pretty educated, well-informed group.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
Um,
And a serious group of people.
yeah,
Because we were comparing ourselves to some of the best that Minneapolis and St. Paul did. You know, I went to Gustavus.
yeah.
I was still a Lutheran, I think, at that time. And we competed against some of the very best students who were younger at that time, coming out of Minneapolis and St. Paul schools. And boy, they really had to hustle. For the first time, they were in trouble.
So you found it pretty serious going to college then.
Oh, yeah.
Deadly serious to get the degrees and everything.
It wasn't rah-rah, fight, you know. It's,
Yeah. So what did you do after the war? Did you meet your wife during the war or after? Or?
I met Ruth in my senior year of Gustavus College. She she had an RN, but she wanted to get a Bachelor of Science degree, so she went down to Gustavus for 2 years, because 2 years would finish her degree. And in the senior year, I met her.
And then when did you get married? Were you still in college or afterward? Or?
She went out 1 year as supervisor in Bethesda Hospital in St. Paul, and I was 1 year teacher at New London, Minnesota. And then we got married that summer.
Yeah. If I could just go back, I forgot to ask you about something. When you were on the LSTs, did you have a time where you kind of switched because it was peacetime? You weren't necessarily needed as a gunner's mate, and you became you had duties with the quartermaster.
Well, I forgot about that. Actually, I liked what the quartermaster did better than the gunner's mate. So, one of my friends on one of the LSTs was a quartermaster, and I learned most of what they did. And so, when I transferred from the one LST to the other, the yeoman put a Q over the G. So I went as a quartermaster striker to the second boat, and then I got a rate, which is equivalent to a buck sergeant, a third petty officer, third class.
Let me pause for a moment for technical reasons. I'll be right back with this camera. Okay, so GM was gunner's mate and QM was quartermaster.
Yeah.
So that was a clever way to do that. So what does a quartermaster do in the Navy?
A quartermaster in the Navy is an assistant to the navigator. They get the charts out in advance of going to a new place. They help each morning, each night with what they call a route star finder. A route star finder is the approximate angle you'll find the stars in the morning or at the night or the sun. You shoot sun sights at noon. And these are all methods by which they found out where they were.
Sure.
Now, when we went back to Pearl Harbor in one of the LSTs, we missed it by 60 miles because it was cloudy. We missed it by 60 miles.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't miss it today, of course.
Well, they've got all the GPS technology.
That's right. So, and then you kept the clocks wound. You did route star finders. Oh, and then you learned how to signal by light. The more use of Morse code by light.
Yeah. Did you have to learn the stars and position yourself using that?
The common ones.
Yeah. And then did you have to learn Morse code, or maybe you knew Morse code for
I didn't know the Morse
communication?
code, but I had to learn it because one of the things that a quartermaster does is to control the light.
Yeah.
And the light was a way of sending messages.
Yeah. Well, I've seen film of this, and it looked like they had to do it pretty quick. I mean, to me as a layperson, you know.
Well, the thing is, a person that was an average person in the light, as soon as you're done with one word, you go like that. You flip it. But the guy that I learned from was so fast, he just held it down. And he just did it as fast as he wanted to. And he reeled it off, he wrote it down.
Could he ever go so fast the other guy on the other end couldn't keep up with what he was saying, or?
He was so good at it.
Yeah.
That it didn't matter how fast they went.
Yeah. So could you tell me then, you finished with your education and then you got married, and where were you living?
Well, we got married, and the town that I turned out of Bayport, Minnesota, had a junior high opening. And so we lived in an apartment down by the Anderson Windelwald plant. And I taught 5 years in the junior high school here. But now while I was here, they had sent the junior high students to a nearby school and paid tuition called Stillwater. While I was here, they consolidated. And so instead of a little small school, which is Bayport, I'm suddenly in a big school system.
Yeah.
And so actually the schools grew around me.
And then this would have been in the 50s? Or
Yes.
late 40s? Or okay, and then
50s. 50s.
so did you stay in Bayport throughout your career?
Well, I stayed in Bayport. I was assistant superintendent of secondary. And I had done an innovative school, a modular scheduled school. We built it from scratch. We trained the people. So it was one of the innovative schools in Minnesota. I went from here to the State Department, and there I was in charge of the public education sector, K through 12, and we provided in-service for all the teachers and administrators in the supposedly in the state.
And were you living here then?
And I lived here.
Yeah. So you had a long career in education as a administrator.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What was the year you ended up retiring from education?
Well, I retired early because I had about 30 some years in. I retired at 60 1/3 age.
Yeah.
I was 60 1/3.
So you're saying 60 1/3 year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I retired in July.
Okay.
And I retired at the age of 60.
Yeah. And
Then I had another 5 years doing consultant work for the state and for the university. And part of my job at the university was a grant by one of the major Japanese companies to evaluate education, and
in Japan?
in the United States and Japan.
Oh, that must have been an interesting.
Yes.
Did you ever make it back to Japan, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Here, I'm in Tokyo Bay, right after it fell. Garbage all over. There's a big anthill right ahead. That's Tokyo. There's an anthill over here, and I mean anthill.
Yeah.
And they call it Yokohama.
So it had been totally devastated.
Oh.
Now you were right in Tokyo Bay right after the surrender?
Right. 30 days after. I can't remember what happened, but it was 30 days after.
Yeah. And was this on the Goldie or the LST?
On the Goldie.
So the surrender documents had been signed and everything at that point.
They signed them in Tokyo Bay.
But you were close enough to Tokyo Bay that people could kind of swim out on debris and pick up your trash in the ocean water?
There was two guys sitting on a wet log, and they were picking up oranges that had green spots on them, and they were and then they saw bread, and they were squeezing it and drying it out and putting it on the log to dry out.
And it had been in the seawater.
Oh yeah. Well, Tokyo Bay was filled with garbage because Americans were dumping their stuff right in and dumping right over.
And they were desperate enough for food that they would take garbage out of seawater and dry it out and eat it.
And then they could sell it.
Yeah. Wow.
40 years later, I come back, and those two cities are so modern and so lit up, and you think 40 years.
Yeah.
They go from an anthill
Yeah.
to a modern city.
Yeah. So it was pretty much flattened, and then
Oh,
there wasn't much left at the end of
so
the war.
much of their houses were wood and what do you call paper?
Yeah.
You remember they firebombed it
Yeah.
because it spread so rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah, I've met several people that were on those incendiary raids, and it was just wiped out. Large parts of Tokyo were burned in one night, and then they went back later, so there wasn't much, I'd imagine, at the end. Now you have had children, and do you have grandchildren?
Yes.
So what are your children's names?
Mark, Paul, and Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
3 sons.
Yeah, and then I assume they're adults,
Yeah.
and they have their own families at
Yep.
this point. And you have many grandchildren?
Well, let's see, grandchildren. There are 6,
Yeah.
and there are 3 great grandchildren.
Oh, okay. Well,
So there's three children, 6 grandchildren, and 3 great grandchildren.
well, that's terrific. I'll have to make more copies of this video when I get finished. That's terrific. Well, one of the ways that I know you is that you were the local founder of Cafe Philo.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what I'd like to do is just pause for a moment, and I'm going to ask some questions just about the founding of Cafe Philo, and I'll ask you a question which is, for people who don't know what Cafe Philo, and this will be more for a promotional, very short thing on YouTube, what is Cafe Philo for people who have no idea what it is? And you as a founder, would be able to talk about that. So let's just start with the history of it. About when did the Bayport Cafe Philo start? Or when did you start it?
In the year 2000.
Oh, okay, so it's about 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I've only been coming for maybe less than a year. So how did you get the idea for this?
Marc Sauté, a French philosopher, I'm trying to remember the date of it, at the Café de Fer, which is Lattice Café, in the Place de Bastille, which is a section of Paris,
Yes.
decided that he would start, that philosophy is too important to be kept among the academics, that philosophy ought to be brought down to street level. And so he started in his cafe a discussion group, and the idea, they didn't have topics in advance. They would determine the topics based on who was there.
Mm-hmm.
And the knowledge they would bring would be the knowledge of living that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And so it started in Paris, and he called it Café Philo.
Mm-hmm.
And
Like philosopher or philosophe in French or whatever.
Philosophy Cafe. Philosophy Cafe.
Yeah.
And we've been there. We've been there.
In Paris?
Yes. We've been at the Cafe, Café de Fer. We've been at the Lattice Cafe.
And are there other Cafe Philos? I've only been to the one in Bayport.
We started, where it started was, we were down in Punta Gorda. We lived on a sailboat. And in Punta Gorda, Florida.
Yes.
And there, one of the women who was active on the, what do they call it, the Arts Council, I suggested we start one.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, let's do it. And she made a flyer.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made a flyer, and we started one in the back of an old bookstore in Punta Gorda, Florida, in also the year 2000. And what happened over time, there became about seven Café Philo. Well, one of them is called Café Theo, and about 7, and they spread here and there. And people went to Canada and they started one, and somebody started one out, and one of the guys I knew came here and then started one in Green Valley, Arizona.
Yeah. Now, at the time in Florida, were you spending like the winters in Florida, or were you living there?
Yeah, just winters.
And then you also have spent years going to Green Valley, Arizona,
Yes.
which
Well,
is south of Tucson.
yes. We the last 5 years or so, we've gone to Arizona.
Yeah. So this is an idea that's really kind of taken off.
Mhm.
The people like the thing. So for someone who doesn't know what Cafe Philo is or has never heard about it, how would you describe what it is and what happens at those meetings?
Well, they work in two ways. Some, they decide on what the topic will be once they arrive, and once they decide on the topic, then they take turns talking about it.
Mhm.
That's the most informal one.
Mhm.
More formally, they have the topics in advance, and they vote on which topics they're going to have.
Mhm.
So then they can do some preparation, and typically they do a round robin to start with, meaning they take turns and everybody gets a chance to say something. Then they open it up and let the group free for all.
And where does this meet locally?
Well, locally it meets here in the library, but it meets in bank buildings, at bookstores,
Mhm.
cafes, wherever. As the book says, wherever two or three are gathered, there's Cafe Philo.
And in Bayport, it meets on Friday at 10:15 because the library opens at 10.
Yes.
And in like Arizona, it would meet at another day and time, I assume.
Arizona, I can't remember whether it meets on Thursday or Friday.
Yeah. Are the groups different in terms of there's a makeup of different people?
Take when they call it Cafe Theo down in Punta Gorda.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's actually not in Punta Gorda. It's nearby. The Cafe Theo is made up of people who don't believe. You'd think they were religious,
Yeah.
but actually they aren't. They're we call them agnostics or atheists.
So it just depends on who's in the community and
That's
is
right.
available at,
Yeah.
in our case here, 10 o'clock on a Friday morning.
Yeah, and they call it Cafe Philo, and you call it a philosophy discussion group.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you're discussing what you would call current events.
Yeah.
And that's all right too.
Yeah.
So it's current events or philosophy.
Well, I just speaking personally, I've really enjoyed going to those, and it's interesting to hear everybody's different perspectives, and anybody of your age is a walking encyclopedia because you've lived through so many different things in your life. Let me ask you about some of those kind of more fun things. Do you remember like what your first automobile was, or did you get it after World War II or before? Or?
I got it after World War II. My first automobile was an Oldsmobile.
An Oldsmobile, okay.
An Oldsmobile. It was big white sidewalls
Mm-hmm.
and a what do you call it? A shade thing over the glass. What do you call it?
Oh yeah, that stuck out ahead of the
Yes.
windshield a little bit as a
Yeah.
shade.
Shade.
Yeah. So it was a hard top.
Yeah, hard top.
Was it a 6-cylinder?
8-cylinder.
8-cylinder.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're a little different generation from me. See, I wasn't born until 9 years after World War II, so I'm more a rock and roll thing.
Yeah.
But I noticed there's kind of a generational difference in the Cafe Philo between older people, many of whom like orchestral music or jazz or blues or So, what kind of music do you like?
Well, it's kind of strange, but when I talked about the paper route that I had,
Yeah.
back in Valley City.
Yeah.
I turned it. I had a Sunday paper route, and that one I had to do real early, and I turned on the radio, and something came out of the Rockies, and the first time I heard the meditation waltz from Mascania,
Uh-huh.
the Mascania, I didn't know I liked opera.
Yeah.
But again, I'm very selective. I like Puccini, I like Verdi, Mascagna, but I do like opera.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Why?
know if you'll have a cup of coffee. Do you
Oh,
use
yeah.
cream or sugar?
No, black's fine. That looks
Oh,
terrific.
okay. Well, help yourself.
Well, I was just getting to whether or not he was a good dancer or not.
Oh, well, if he'd had a couple of beers, he's a better dancer.
Oh, is that the key? Well, we'll take a break here and
Yeah.
maybe have some coffee, and that looks delicious. Well, thank you. So you were saying you had gotten back to Hiroshima, but this would be like decades later.
It was a decade.
But there was
later.
still apparent damage.
But I guess my feeling is that the next place we're going after Okinawa was the southern part of Kyushu. We were preparing for the invasion of Kyushu, and I guess knowing the Japanese and the way they would have fought, I guess that I would be in favor of the dropping of the bomb. It saved my life.
Yeah.
Is that a moral decision? No, it's probably not.
I feel the same way, and I probably wouldn't be here. And it shortened the war,
Yep.
even though there's a lot of loss of life, but there was a lot of loss of life from the B-29 raids and everything. But the impression that my dad said he had, and he said everybody had it, was they thought that war was going to last longer than it did.
Oh.
And he was in the pipeline also.
Yep.
So this decision Truman made shorten the ending of that war, which probably saved millions of people's lives.
On both sides.
Yeah. Did you keep any letters or correspondence or any of that stuff, or records or
No.
documents? Or
I should have kept records and stuff.
Yeah.
I should have kept. Well, yeah, they were concerned about the fact of they what do you call it? They read all your letters to make sure that you didn't send any locations back.
Yeah.
So all your letters were read by officers
Hmm.
on the ship.
You had to be careful what you put in the
Yeah.
letter.
So the way I explained where I was by misspelling the names of well-known friends.
Hmm.
I misspelled their names deliberately, and the people were able to put in the proper letters, and they could find out that it was Okinawa.
Oh, that's clever. Now, there's a few photographs from back then, and you've loaned me some of those, and I wanted to ask you about a couple of them. There's one that I put up, and I'll just put it in front of the cameras here. But the one on the left, when was that taken? You look kind of young. Was that when you first went in, or?
Well, I don't know.
There's not much insignia on the
No, you
uniform.
can't tell about the.
I'm wondering if that was the very first, like your induction photograph.
Well,
maybe.
it looks like my induction one because my haircut is so skimmed.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably at the beginning. The beginning.
So you were probably 18 years old in that picture.
Oh yeah, 18.
Yeah. And then this other picture that
That was taken later.
well, you're kind of almost like a mugshot there. I thought maybe it's a passport picture
Yeah, I
or
don't
something.
I don't know why that picture's even there.
Yeah. And then this one, you look like you got the insignia and everything, and maybe you could describe, if you remember, when those were.
Okay. The one at the bottom first, with the four guys.
Yeah.
That's taken in Hawaii.
Oh.
That's in Honolulu, Hawaii, and the one at the top is a picture after I'd gotten out. I'd just gotten out, and so the picture of this thing that's sewed on the shoulder, on this shoulder right here,
Yeah.
is a kind of a post patch of some kind.
You're done with your service kind
I'm
of
done
thing.
with my service,
Yeah.
and I've got my one stripe, so I'm equivalent to a sergeant or something.
Yeah. So that's right after. So we got sort of the beginning and probably the end of your service in terms of the picture. Now there was some that looked like they were taken on the Goldie there. Maybe you could tell me what those
Well, these
pictures are.
Oh, there's the 3-50. The front of the Goldie is a picture of the 3-50, and then there's a picture of me with the Gunner's Mate gang. That's when I finally made the Gunner's Mate gang.
Yeah. Where were you on like VJ Day and when the war ended? Were you out on the ocean on the ship or? on shore somewhere? That probably would have been sometime like, for VJ Day would have been, I suppose, September 9th or something like that,
I
45.
was probably on an LST, repatriate.
Yeah.
Or wait, VJJ. Oh, no, I would not.
Well, there was VE Day, but that was like May 8th or something.
I think VJJ happened when I was in Santa Barbara on the waiting for the Goldie to be decommissioned.
So was it pretty wild on land, or were you?
Oh, well, everybody, night and day.
Yeah, everybody was celebrating.
Everybody was celebrating, yeah.
Did they keep you on the naval base, or did you get time to celebrate?
Well, those of us that had the least time in the service stayed on
yeah,
to watch the ship that was went ashore.
yeah. And the older guys that had been out there a long time, they were probably ecstatic to be finished.
They were.
Okay, I think I've covered most of the questions in terms of the events. Could you tell me what effect you think this experience going through the Navy in World War II had on you, from the time you went in and then you were done?
Well, you know, actually, I grew up in Valley City, North Dakota, and I went to the schools were all in the same block, and so my whole world for the first 18 years was circumscribed by Valley City hunting around the edges. I hunted at the edges of the town.
That's about as far away as you got.
Yeah,
From the
and all of a
center
sudden I'm in the Navy, and I'm in I'm in Farragut, Idaho, and then I'm in Treasure Island, and I'm in California, and then I'm in New Caledonia. I barely knew Australia, let alone New Caledonia, and so here I am, and I'm starting to be aware of there's a world out there, and the relationships of the parts of land to one to the other, became interesting to me. I mean, how far was it to wherever?
Yeah.
And it made a difference because I found out, you know, in 16 days before we got to Noumea,
Yeah.
from San Francisco, and boy, and a lot of things happened in 16 days. It came from cold and damp to warm and tropical, and so I realized, I guess the short sentence is that I realized there was a world out there.
Yeah. Now I'm a landlubber from the Midwest, so I get seasick whenever I get on a ship that has any kind of waves. And I can't imagine, I wasn't in the Navy, but you guys were on these ships that would roll and everything. Did you ever get seasick?
Oh, we all got sick.
Yeah.
I tell you, on that Frederick Lakes, I think you do mean it.
Yeah.
We went out and hit rollers right away.
Mm-hmm.
Huge rollers from a storm way out. So it wasn't storming, but the rollers were there. And the ship began to roll. And then those of us who were in the garbage locker had no windows and had the deck rolling beneath our feet, plus the garbage. and I tell you, at first I thought I was going to die, and then I was afraid I wasn't. And but the thing is, you find out most people get their sea legs. Now, even old salts, if they're ashore for a while and they hit rough water immediately, going out, immediately, they, funny thing, they find reasons to be in their bunk.
Yeah.
And so most people are subject to water action.
Yeah. And when you get ill on a ship, what do you do? Go over the side? Go to the side, or go to the head, or?
You learn about the windward and the leeward side, and you don't go on the windward side. You go on the leeward side.
This is practical experience for.
Yeah.
Did you ever do any sailing or anything after or were you tired of the ocean, or?
No, I like the water.
Yeah.
And in fact, Ruth and I lived on a sailboat for, I don't know how many years, 11 years. We lived on a sailboat for 11 winters down in Punta Gorda, Florida.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you really did like the ocean then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like the water.
Yeah. And would you sail around in the waters off of Florida?
Yes, we sailed around, and then we sailed over in the Bahamas, and I would say, to be honest, though, I'm a fair weather sailor. I don't like bad weather,
Yeah.
and I don't feel really confident in bad weather either.
Now, I didn't ask you this, but that monsoon that you hit, there's a lot of history about a monsoon that was something that Admiral Halsey was blamed for because there was a tremendous amount of damage done to the Navy ships. Was this the same monsoon, or was that a different event?
I don't know. I wish I could locate the date for you, but actually, to break off the bow of a cruiser
Yeah,
takes a really big monsoon.
yeah,
And this bow of the cruiser, we saw the cruiser. And you know, every room is what do you call it? You can tighten down.
yeah.
And
Close the hatch.
yeah, and so the ship was afloat, but its bow was gone.
The people that went through that monsoon, some of them still are angry about it because they lost like over 1,000 sailors. They lost some destroyers, and so I guess a monsoon out there in the Pacific is a serious thing. And there's been some controversy whether you should have had this task force, the different groups of ships go around the monsoon. But that's still kind of a controversial subject, and it was a monsoon during the Second World War that really damaged a lot of Navy ships.
Yeah.
And you have personal experience, at least of one monsoon.
I thought that's the closest I thought we were to sinking.
Yeah.
That our ship would sink.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, ours is an old one. We were low to the water, we were sharp bound, and we had a low fantail. We were low to the water.
Yeah.
And so we weren't high, like the newer ones were higher above the water, had a higher what they call a freeboard. And so I thought we were goners for sure.
How did you get resupplied did they, like oil and food, and did they have supply ships that would come up to the destroyer?
You know, there were signals, flags that you'd fly for oil or for supply divisions, and as soon as one was available, it would come up next to you and the lines would transfer over, and they'd fill your tanks with diesel.
Yeah.
And so forth, and others would have supplies.
Now you're on a frontline ship as doing picket duty, and they were stationed, I assume, behind you hundreds of miles or something?
Well, they were behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were vulnerable.
Yeah. When you traveled, did you travel like in a group with like a battleship, or did you just travel as a separate ship on the ocean?
We traveled most of the time. We traveled, other than from Ulithi up to Okinawa.
Yeah.
We traveled most of the time by ourselves.
Yeah. Do you still remember any of the night navigation stars or any of those things? Betelgeuse, yeah, that's a big one. Well, that's a while ago. I always like asking people if they still remember the things they learned, because that was 70 years ago now. Like Morse code, I can't imagine people still remember the dits and the dots or whatever that's. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a wonderful chance to get to hear some of your stories, and I'm glad we can record some of them for your family. And of course, I'll make copies of the interview, and probably put some of it up on YouTube in case you have family get spread out over the country in the future.
Okay.
And was there any other topics or questions maybe I didn't ask that you wanted to say anything about?
Well, there was just that one where that, you know, we're going back. We're going back to be free again.
Yeah.
And here a broken landmine has broken out loose of its chain and it's floating. And here it goes right by our boat, our LST.
Where was this at? Was this coming into the U.S. or one of the?
Coming into. Well, it was on the way to Pearl Harbor.
A Pacific island.
Yeah.
And it was you mean like a floating, like a mine, like for a ship, or you said a landmine?
Well, I mean a floating. No, it's a floating mine for a ship.
Yeah.
But it's meant to be underwater to about 2 feet.
Yeah.
But the storm had broken the chain.
Yeah.
And so it's floating. but here it was the big spine sticking out,
Yeah.
and all I had to do is touch the edge.
Yeah.
And here it's
That close to the ship?
You can make up your mind. I saw it. I couldn't say. I couldn't speak. You were a touching officer,
Yeah.
But I grabbed his arm.
Yeah.
I grabbed his arm and went like that.
You were speechless.
I couldn't talk, and we circled it, then fired and
Blew it up?
Yeah. Well, otherwise another ship would hit it.
So you were pretty close a couple of times where you could have had ended.
And it's probably a normal. Or I mean, not normal. It's not enemy.
Yeah.
So much as it natural events.
Was it probably our mine that was, or it was
I don't know.
just a floating mine out there in the water?
I couldn't tell by looking at it, and nobody
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
It might have been ours.
Yeah. And there was enough wave action to break the chain that held it to the.
Apparently, it had been the storm, like the.
Yeah.
And broken loose from its chain, and it was just floating.
Boy, I wonder how many ships we lost to things like that.
When you talk nowadays, we have a word called friendly fire.
Yeah. Did they call that? I guess they didn't probably use the same terminology.
They didn't use that terminology then.
Now, a lot of the people that are veterans today that come back, they talk about, especially Vietnam, and with all these multiple redeployments in Afghanistan and Iraq, that they're having like a lot of psychological problems, and they were in combat for so long. In Vietnam, you could be in combat for 365 days straight.
Yeah.
But did people that you met after World War II, did they have sort of a decompression time, or you didn't see that, or was that a problem then too?
Well, I think there's a real difference between being in the Marines or in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
There you're on shore,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the mud, and you're slugging out with the enemy, and you're maybe living in a foxhole.
Mm-hmm.
Every night I was in my bunk, unless there's general quarters. General quarters is meant to get up there and get ready.
Yeah.
And so we live with stress, and we may have had salt showers,
Mm-hmm.
but we had showers,
Yeah.
and we had food. So in a way, you can argue about which is more secure, being a Marine or Army, slogging out on the beach, or going alongside the beach in a Navy ship. But I like the Navy ship better.
Yeah. Well, you had, a sense of sort of normality.
Yeah.
That you had been living in those sort of same conditions
This
for.
is at my home.
Yeah.
My floating home, and it's with me all the time.
You would hear people that were in tanks versus in the infantry say the same thing, that the people in the tanks hated getting out of the tank. They felt safe inside the tank.
Inside the tank.
And the people that were outside said, well, what are you people doing? You get hit with a bazooka around and that thing will go up. So they felt safer outside of the tank.
Yeah.
So I guess it's whatever you were
whatever
familiar
you get used to.
whatever you're familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, is the fact that your generation, almost everybody of a certain age was in the military, when you got done, did people talk about their service, or did they just put it behind them and go on to having jobs and kids and careers, or did you ever kind of come back and bond with any groups?
To come to think of it, actually most of the people I knew, and of course most of the people I knew that were in the service during the war, were at college.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to be busy. We all seem to be forward-looking.
Yeah.
And we didn't spend very much time talking about the military.
Yeah.
Nobody, regardless of whether they are an officer or a sergeant or a private, or nobody cared.
Yeah.
It was mostly about the college.
Yeah, and maybe that's something that could be learned by this current generation, is that getting your mind focused on the future, and getting the education, then the job, then the marriage, then the kids. That kind of.
Well, with the present generation too, though, we're sending them back for repeated. What do you call it? Repeated
redeployments.
Redeployments. So often, I think it's unhealthy.
Yeah. It's not healthy to send young men off, and doing that kind of activity is.
Well, killing other people is not a healthy job.
Yeah. We have several people in our group, with the Cafe Philo group, that were Second World War veterans. There's John Baird, who was 8th
Yeah.
Air Force Bolter, or
Yeah.
waist gunner, who lost part of his foot. Bill McDonald was in the Army. I think he was in France, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. And there may be others that I just don't know about. And I've only been going for a short time. So, were there other people that used to go to the Cafe Philo after you got it started that are now gone or passed away that were memorable or important to the founding of this? Are the people that you started this up with, are they mostly gone, or are they still
They're
active?
mostly here.
Oh, they are. So
Yeah.
for 12 years they've been participating on and off.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah, mostly here.
yeah. Well, that's great. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions I have. And again, I'd like to thank you for sharing your memories and some of your experiences and insights
Well.
into. You've lived a long life and done a lot of different things. Did you ever meet any people that were famous or USO, or didn't they
Yeah.
do any of that stuff with the Navy?
Yeah.
I ask that because occasionally people met incredibly famous people during
Yeah.
the USO shows, or they just ran into them.
Yeah.
I've met people that met presidents and movie
Yes.
stars and that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I didn't. We had movies, later on.
Hmm.
But no, I didn't.
So they would show for entertainment. They'd like get a 16 millimeter movie, and what would they show you? Like a Hollywood movie, or
There'd be a Hollywood movie on deck.
Yeah.
On the deck of the ship after it got dark.
did they have newsreels?
Yes, they had, yes, P-A-T-H-E, Pathé News was the name of a news outfit.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Pathé News. We'd have newsreels. Usually
Yeah.
they were old.
yeah. Oh, so it wasn't like up to the minute. Well, my mother said that they got a lot of their news from the newsreels
Yeah.
here back in the
Yeah.
States, but she was younger than that. So, all right. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn the camera off.
On the island of Okinawa, 5,000 miles from San Francisco, the earth shook from a fearful pounding by our ships and planes. the south, our British allies were hurling their naval might at the bypassed fortress of Formosa. They were raking Sakashima with shell and bomb. England's greatest battleships and newest carriers were there, screening us on the south, paying off with pleasure an old debt to Nippon. On the northern flank, Admiral Mark A. Mitcher's tireless Task Force 58 stepped up its 2-week-old aerial assault on Kyushu and the enemy home island. It was the 4th of July in reverse on Japanese shipping, harbors, airfields, factories. There's a Jap carrier in trouble. Men of the Navy, 400,000 men, called it Love Day. Elsewhere in the world, it was Easter Sunday, 1945. At 8:30 that morning, the Marines and the Army went in. $100,000 Yanks were rattling the lock on Japan's front door. They were plowing sacred soil with American boots, tractors, tanks. The first 7 days were baffling, mysteriously quiet. Ashore, Army and Marines pushed steadily forward, looking for an enemy which had vanished. On the 1,400 ships supporting the invasion, men waited at their battle stations and waited. We knew the blow would come, but how and when? Then it struck. They call it kamikaze, meaning the divine tempest. We call them suicide planes, manned by pilots wearing the ceremonial red sash of the kamikaze corps. They specialize in one-way trips. Their destination, the deck or hull of any American ship onto which plane, bombs, burning gasoline, and red-sashed pilot can crash. Japan's secret weapon was no secret to our gunners or our flyers, who for months had been tinting the far Pacific with those same red sashes. But now, to meet our latest challenge, our deepest thrust, there rose every plane that could fly, new or old, from the very heart of Japan itself. 16-year-olds, still in aviation schools, were given their wings, a sash, and a mission. It was a maniacal, all-out effort to smash our sea power, isolate our troops on Okinawa. It was desperation. It was suicide. But it would be the pattern from now on to the very finish. A struggle between men who want to die and men who fight to live. By night it went on. Hundreds of land-based planes streaked low over the sea at our carriers. They dove out of the dawn. Again, the old battleships were there, and new ships of the line. There was no retreat. This was the fleet that came to stay, that had to stay. Had to stay because the men that the Navy landed needed tons of steel from Navy guns. Even as we beat off fresh waves of Jap planes overhead, the big guns of the fleet smashed enemy strongholds miles away. Had to stay because our men advancing through the rice paddies and over the steep ridges had to have close air support from the baby flat tops. In the air control room aboard the command ship, strike upon strike was ordered. Then the Navy and Marine flyers laid down precise, deadly rocket fire to help make the next 50 yards of advance less costly. This was the fleet that had to stay because always the stream of supplies to those troops must be steady and huge. A bridge of ships was thrown across the Pacific to bring our men more food, more medicine, more ammunition. And waiting at the end of the longest supply route in any war were the kamikazes. This was a fleet fighting like infantry, punching away at the enemy. Only there are no foxholes in the ocean.
March 18th to the 21st, 556 Japanese planes destroyed.
Men fought without sleep. Some fought with guns. Some with axes, torches. Some with fire-smothering foam. It was fix and fight at the same time. Many fell at their battle stations, and some were buried. Give up the ship became more than a schoolbook legend. It became a fact of life. April 13th brought more planes and shocking news. Between attacks, weary men, afloat and ashore, paid honor to the beloved figure in the blue Navy cloak, said farewell to the father of the modern American Navy. Then they turned and met the next assault. During 3 fabulous months, thousands of aircraft were hurled against our ships. But only 10% ever slipped through our air patrol. Yet the siege by air went on.
April 6th, 277 enemy planes shot down. April 12th, 100 planes.
In the early gray hours of the morning watch on May 9th, the great news came. VE Day in Europe. It came first to the lookouts, to the men who stand guard while the others sleep. Men were glad and grateful. Home seemed a little nearer. But for now, VE Day was simply the 1,247th day of our Pacific War. From the rolling decks of our carriers, the fighters rose once again to intercept the enemy. On the cruisers and destroyers and battleships, our heavy batteries once more leveled against the Jap-studded hills of Okinawa. The barking 20s and 40s sent streams of fiery lead into the world's last alien sky.
May 12th, 164 Jap aircraft down. June 3rd, 45. June 6th, 67. June 8th, 30.
Week after vicious week, the most devastating air-sea battle of all time wore on. The Japanese paid with their Air Force, with their newest ships, 4,232 planes. The fleet that came to stay paid a price too. But our men, our ships, our planes took everything the land could throw at the sea and handed it back double. The question, could a fleet stand up against the massed fury of land-based planes, got an emphatic answer from the men who fight to live, from the fleet that came to stay.